Okay, so welcome to another deep dive.
Yeah.
We love to pick out these really, really fascinating sources, and this time,
Yeah,
I think you've outdone yourself with this one.
I think so too.
This is a narrative poem that tells this story of a traffic police captain, this guy named Gia Durong,
Mm-hmm.
and it's so interesting because like the premise of this whole thing is,
Yeah, it's a little bit out there.
yeah, it sounds unbelievable, but it's that he travels this huge distance
Right.
just to return like a tiny little overpayment on a traffic fine.
Yeah, a very, very small amount of money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like that's what we're going to try to figure out today
Exact.
in this deep dive.
Yeah.
It's like, why does he do that?
Right.
What is this journey really all about?
What's the real story?
Yeah. What does it tell us about this society and everything?
Yeah, and what I love about this one is that it's a narrative poem, so we get the events, but we also get kind of these glimpses into the deeper motivations.
Oh yeah.
And maybe even some societal commentary woven into the actual story itself.
Yeah, it's like right from the start when you hear that premise.
Yeah,
There's something else going on.
absolutely. There's got to be something more to it that meets the eye.
Yeah, it's not just like a simple administrative thing.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's dive into this initial setup. We meet this Captain Gia Durong,
Mm-hmm.
and it seems like he's doing pretty well in his career. Things are going well for him.
Mm-hmm.
But the poem also specifically mentions this like backdrop of this political campaign
Yes.
that was happening at the time called the 8 Honors and 8 Shames.
The 8 honors and 8 shames.
Yeah, and it kind of hints that he sees this campaign as like an opportunity. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And this campaign, it's interesting because on the surface, it's all about promoting these really positive values, ethical conduct.
Yeah.
But I think what we see here is that it kind of inadvertently created this environment where the appearance of being ethical and holding those values became almost more important than actually believing in them.
Oh, so it's almost like you could use that to your advantage.
Exactly. And for someone like Captain Gia, who's clearly ambitious and wants to move up,
Yeah.
aligning himself so publicly with this big campaign,
Right.
it makes him look really good.
Yeah, like a very strategic move.
Very strategic, yeah.
Okay, so he decides, okay, I'm gonna make this into a news story. I'm gonna use this campaign to my advantage.
Mm-hmm.
And he wastes no time. He reaches out to the local television station
Oh, wow.
and he tells them that he's got this great, story that they should be interested
Yeah,
in.
so going straight to the media.
Yeah, and he's smart about it. He's
Yeah.
like, okay, I'm gonna invite 2 of your journalists for a nice meal.
Of course, a little incentive.
Yeah, yeah, we'll go to this fancy Utah restaurant.
Yeah.
We can discuss the details.
Oh, yeah, very nice.
But it's funny because it's like wine and dining journalists, like right off the bat.
It does seem a little unusual, doesn't it?
Yeah. What do you think is going on there?
Well, I think it definitely shows that he wants to kind of control the narrative from the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe even influence how they're going to portray the story.
Interesting.
And it's not just a quick lunch either. This meal at Utah restaurant went on until 4 p.m.
Wow.
That's a long time for a little briefing.
Yeah, that's just a whole afternoon.
Exactly.
Okay, so not only that, the poem specifically says, there's this excessive drinking going on.
Oh, so they weren't just sipping tea.
No. Everyone's getting, loose, shall we say.
Having a good time.
The journalists, the police officers,
Yeah.
then finally after all this food and all this drinking, Captain G is like, okay, guess what?
What's next?
We're all going on an overnight train journey,
Oh, wow.
and they don't even know where they're going yet.
So it's a secret destination.
Total secret. It's like, what do you make of that?
Well, it just seems like he's adding to the drama,
Yeah.
building up the anticipation, like it's some big reveal.
Totally.
And it really emphasizes that this is not just about reporting a fact. This is about creating this big production.
Yeah, like a performance
Yeah,
almost.
exactly.
Okay, so the next morning, they all get on this train. It's a big group, 10 journalists,
Then.
2 other police officers. Everyone's traveling in style. They've got these nice upper-class sleeping berths.
Oh, wow. Living the high life.
Yeah, and they arrive in Zhengzhou the next day.
Okay.
But then Gia tells everyone Zhengzhou, this isn't the final stop.
It's just a stop along the way.
Yeah, but he's like, we're going to stop here for 2 days anyway because there's this big international kite festival happening.
Oh, wow. A kite festival.
And even at this point, it's like, does this seem a little weird?
It does seem kind of strange, doesn't it? I mean, he was talking about a major news story,
Yeah.
and now they're taking this detour to a kite festival.
Yeah, it's like, does a kite festival really fit into this, serious news story?
It doesn't really add up.
And the poem even goes into detail about all these amazing kites that they see.
Oh,
Yeah, it's like Sun Wukong Neza, the seven fairies,
wow.
Phoenix's peacocks, a giant dragon.
So they really did see quite a show.
And then it even mentions these foreign kites that are like these fierce fighting kites.
Oh, wow. So they got the full experience.
Yeah, like it's really interesting imagery.
It is.
And the group is loving it. They're all so excited.
Of course, it's a free trip. Who wouldn't be?
Yeah, they're like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, we got so lucky. We're getting this extra treat.
Yeah.
But the journey doesn't end there.
Okay, so where do they go next?
So after 2 days in Zhengzhou, it's back on another train,
Mm.
this time heading north.
Going further north. Still no word on where they're going.
Nope, still a secret.
Okay.
And you're not going to believe this.
What happens now?
He decides, okay, we're going to stop in Beijing for 3 days.
He's adding another stop.
Yeah, and he's like, has anyone here not been to Beijing?
Oh, wow.
And it turns out nobody in the group had been to Beijing before.
I guess they're all from the same area.
Yeah, and he's like, well, we're passing through anyway. We have to take advantage of this.
Yeah.
Got to see the sights.
Yeah, and he even gives them this whole itinerary.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's like, we're going to see Tiananmen Square, Beihai Park, the Forbidden City,
Oh,
the Summer Palace, even the bedeling section of the Great Wall.
that's quite the tour.
Yeah, it's amazing, and everyone's just thrilled.
Yeah, who wouldn't be?
But again, it's like, what does any of this have to do with?
Yeah, where's the news story in all of this?
Right, exactly. It's all these detours.
Hmm.
And it really makes you think that this whole thing is less about, like solving a problem quickly
Yeah.
and more about creating this whole experience,
Yeah, crafting a narrative.
Yeah, and it's like by giving the journalists and the other officers these like amazing experiences.
Yeah, all having a great time.
It's almost like he's setting them up to be, really positive about whatever this news story turns out to be.
Right, like buttering them up a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. I see it.
So finally, after all this, sightseeing and these unexpected stops,
Okay.
they arrive in Dalian.
They made it to the final destination.
Yeah, and this is where he finally reveals why they've come all this way.
The big reveal.
Yeah, he says there was this mistake,
Mhm.
in finding a truck driver from Dalian.
Oh, okay.
And he's like, this is unacceptable. We have to fix this.
So all this for a mistake.
Yeah, and he says, I traveled all this way to personally apologize to this driver
Wow.
and return the money that he overpaid.
I mean, it's good that he wants to correct the mistake,
Yeah,
but it is a little bit dramatic, don't you think?
yeah, it's like this huge journey for this tiny little thing.
Exactly, and the poem really highlights that difference. This
Yeah.
whole massive undertaking, all this money spent for this tiny overpayment.
Yeah, and it's not even just the journey itself. He has this whole plan for how the apology is going to go down.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's already rented this minibus. He's found out where the driver usually parks his truck.
He's done his research.
Yeah, and he's given very specific instructions to the journalists.
Okay, what are the instructions?
It's like the moment I start talking to the driver, start recording everything.
Wow, so it's all planned out.
Yeah, audio, video, photos, the whole thing.
Yeah.
And the driver is this guy named Master Liang. And the poem describes him as being a short man. So keep that in mind.
Okay, a short man named Master Liang. I got it.
It's just funny because it's like, if you really want to just apologize to someone,
You don't need a whole camera crew.
right, you wouldn't need all this fanfare,
Yeah, it seems like he cares more about the public image than the actual apology.
Totally.
It's very performative.
Okay, so they find Master Liang, and the poem goes into this whole description of the encounter.
Okay,
So Jia is very polite. He greets him, respectfully.
okay.
And Master Liang is clearly flattered. He's like, oh, Captain, very respectful.
Of course, he's probably a little intimidated.
Yeah. And then Jia gives this apology, and it sounds like it's totally rehearsed.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He even remembers the exact date of the incident.
Wow.
And he even remembers that Master Liang was transporting hemp rope.
So he did his homework.
Yeah. And then he hands him the 30 yuan, that was
Mhm.
overpaid. And the poem says that Master Liang is like visibly moved.
Yeah.
He's like, his face is all flushed. He's super grateful.
That's the reaction he's looking for.
Totally.
You good PR.
And then it's showtime,
What happens?
Jia turns to the camera, looks right at it.
Oh, wow.
And he introduces himself, Captain Jia Durong, and he starts talking about how this kind of mistake is unacceptable.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, this goes against our goal of a harmonious society.
Oh, he's bringing in the big ideas.
Yeah, and he even
Ah.
says that the police force has been studying, these important central documents,
Okay.
and they're working hard to improve. And he's like, I personally led this journey all the way to Dalian just for this.
Oh, he's really emphasizing his dedication.
Yeah, he's making it a big deal.
And I bet the journalists are eating it up.
Oh, yeah, they're loving this.
I mean, it's a good story.
And then the whole thing ends with everyone clapping.
Oh, wow. A round of applause.
Yeah, the poem even calls it the end of the special interview.
It's like a performance, isn't it?
Yeah, it's totally staged.
And by using language like harmonious society and central documents,
Right.
he's connecting this little thing to these big political ideas.
Exactly.
It's not just about a fine anymore.
No, it's way bigger than that now.
And the applause at the end, it just adds to the feeling that this was all a show.
Yeah.
Like the curtains closing on a successful play.
So obviously Gia's happy.
Yeah.
He's like, that went perfectly.
He got what he wanted.
Yeah. But then there's a little bit of a snag on the return journey.
What happens?
They get stuck in Dalian for 3 days
Oh no, why?
because they can't get train tickets back for the whole group.
Oh wow, so they're delayed.
Yeah. And they end up just flying home.
So they took this long train journey with all those detours and then they just fly back.
Yeah. And the poem says everyone was thrilled about that.
I'm sure they were tired of trains by that point.
Yeah. But it just makes you think, all this for a 30 yuan overpayment.
Right, like how much did this whole thing cost?
It must have been a lot of money,
Yeah, it seems like saving money wasn't really the priority.
No.
It was more about looking good and being efficient.
Exactly.
Interesting.
And then when they get back, there's all this media coverage.
Okay.
And the headline is, Captain Gia travels thousands of miles to return fine, 8 honors and 8 shames in action.
Oh, wow. They really went for it.
Yeah. And the poem even says that it got all this public acclaim.
So it worked. People loved it.
Yeah, he totally got what he wanted.
He knew what he was doing.
Yeah, it seems like it.
This is great.
So there's this really interesting moment in the poem, where we shift from this public view of everything
Okay.
to something more private.
Okay.
So Gia's at home, and he's feeling pretty good about himself.
Yeah, I bet he's expecting a promotion.
Yeah, he's thinking this whole image project was a huge success.
Mhm.
But then his son says something really interesting.
What does he say?
He basically says that the whole thing was fake, big, and empty.
Oh, wow. He's calling him out.
Yeah, and in Chinese, they use this term, jia.com.
G.com.
Yeah, it's like a really common criticism.
Yeah.
It's when something looks impressive, but it's actually meaningless.
Right. It's all for show.
Yeah, and it's interesting that it's his son who says this,
Yeah, it's coming from someone close to him.
Like within his own family.
Yeah.
They see through it.
Right.
And Gia's reaction is amazing.
Right.
He's just completely dismissive of his son.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's like, you're naive, you don't understand how things work.
He thinks his son is being idealistic.
Yeah, he's like, this is how officialdom works.
Oh, wow.
He's like creating a positive image.
Yeah.
That's what matters.
It doesn't matter if it's real.
No, he's like, who cares if it's fake, big, and empty?
That's a pretty cynical view.
Yeah, it's pretty shocking.
It is the truth for him.
Yeah, and that line really feels like the whole point of this poem,
It's like the message he's trying to get across.
Yeah, so we started with this, like, almost funny story, a traffic cop going on this crazy journey to return some money.
Yeah.
But we ended up uncovering this huge, elaborate performance, this media campaign.
And this admission that it was all fake.
Yeah. So what does this whole thing say to you about, the desire for a good image and how things work?
Well, I think the story shows us that this kind of behavior isn't limited to just one person,
Mhm.
It's a reflection of a whole system
Oh, yeah.
where appearances are often valued more than actual integrity.
It's like the system rewards this kind of behavior.
Exactly. And it makes you question these grand ideas like harmonious society.
Right.
Are they really believed or are they just tools to get ahead?
Yeah. That's a good question.
And I think the most important takeaway is that we have to be critical. We have to
Yeah.
look beyond these public displays of virtue and ask what's really going on.
Like, what's the motivation behind it?
Exactly. Are they really trying to make things better or are they just trying to make themselves look good?
And what happens when we value image over substance?
Yeah. Does that actually help anyone or does it just create more problems?
That's something to think about.
It is. It's a question we all have to ask ourselves.
Well, this was a fascinating deep dive.
It really was.
I always love talking about these things with you.
Me too. Always a pleasure.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
See you next time.